Right, welcome back. So a bit of an unscripted video today because this was something which just came up this weekend and it seemed a good time to talk about it. First off, I just want to say, I know that people are going to be like, Luton, where's your next lore video, etc, etc. Yes, I am working on it. It's going to be a longer one, probably over an hour. That's why it's taking me some time and there's a few things going on at the moment. And what we're talking about today are the ongoing problems that Games Workshop is having, just having enough stock seemingly, but also things like keeping their website online when customers come to make a purchase, issues with scalpers, issues with fear of missing out, and the concerns that that creates for people as we are approaching the 10th edition. Now I'll also note, I don't want to start, and I also don't want people to think that I'm going to start being one of those YouTube producers who is just constantly negative, constantly on the doom train, because quite honestly, it's exhausting and a little silly actually. It's always been a thing forever on YouTube that there's a niche within any community of people who just corner the market in being miserable and negative about every single thing, as silly as the people who are constantly positive, just the other extreme. I think the one thing you can say though is at least then you're consistent, which gives the illusion of being, illusion of having some integrity, I suppose. The much more difficult and often less well received thing to do as a commentator, as a YouTube producer, is to actually call the positives where they are and call the negatives where they are. It's not the best thing because then you end up getting people coming at you from both sides who are not happy, but in my opinion it generally is the right thing to do. So yeah, I just want to be able to call the problems where I see them and also be positive where that is appropriate as well. Because at the end of the day, I'm a big fan of Warhammer 40,000 and I would be lying if I said I'm not a little biased towards enjoying the hobby space. I think, that's pretty clear. Anything which has got kind of Warhammer on it, I'm like, yes please, I'll have that. Thank you very much. That's been the case for some, 30 years for me, basically. At the same time, I'm still a consumer, a customer, and there are things which are annoying and things that rightly need to be addressed. I also want to address one thing because I always find it kind of funny. There's always the people who are like, vote with your wallet, don't give them the money for pre-orders, don't give them the money for the limited, and they'll learn their lesson. It's like, yeah, okay, in theory, yes, possibly that could work. However, and I wanted to get this thought in very early in the video so people didn't miss it and not later on. Whenever people say stuff like that, there are times, yes, where if a company outrages enough people, then en masse they take some action, voting with their wallets as it were. Yes, it can have an effect. But when it comes to Games Workshop,
business, eh? Well, let me tell you something. You just lost yourself a customer.
What? I'm sorry, Homer, I couldn't hear you.
I said you just lost yourself a customer.
What?
You just lost yourself a customer.
Homer, you're gonna have to speak up.
Just lost yourself a customer.
So with that in mind, Games Workshop are not particularly concerned about people leaving the hobby. Although saying that, obviously 10th edition has changed around a lot, and a lot of that is due to feedback they received from people who were not so interested in 9th or had stopped playing. So in actuality, maybe there is something a little to them obviously being concerned. They don't want to be completely belligerent and ignore their customer base. Another thing I thought about was, given the context of the ongoing situation when it comes to people trying to secure product, the very concept of a pre-order is slightly a bit of a misnomer, because the term itself, pre-order, is suggesting that there is enough product for you to be able to pre-order it. Originally, when they started doing pre-orders with video games, the entire point of it was to make sure that you were securing your copy. And then obviously at release day, there would be many more copies, and if you just were there in store, you could grab one. Now, obviously pre-order has changed a little bit over the years, so now pre-order for video games tends to just mean you are putting money down early and you get some small extra benefit with that. Usually, you get some skins or some extra pack or music or whatever on video games anyway. But in terms of Games Workshop, what are you getting extra for pre-ordering? Nothing. You're not getting anything really for it. So you are basically just ordering. It's not a pre-order, and effectively when it gets to the actual release day, so a week later, because remember the pre-orders are usually only 1 week in advance from when the product ships, so effectively you're not pre-ordering, you're ordering. There's just a difference between the order going a week ahead of the actual release day. It's not like, oh, I missed out on the online order, so now if I rush down to my local Games Workshop or other store 1 week later, I'll be able to get some product because they got it. No, usually the Games Workshops, those local ones, you'd be lucky if they got one extra item. So that's not really true either. If you're going to have a pre-ordering system, then it really should be that. In the same way, and we'll talk about this later as well, in the same way that with Indomitus, it was like, okay, we have a certain amount of stock. If you make a pre-order, if you're lucky, you can pre-order some of that stock. If you're not lucky, well, we will honor the fact that you have said, I would like this. Not necessarily exactly made to order, more like we're going to do like a second batch run, and as soon as that comes in, it will go out to you immediately. That kind of thing. I think people would just be happy to know that. I also, though, think people need to know how far ahead that's going to be, because again, historically, they're not great at sort of saying when product is going to come in. It's often, and it can be a long time. Is it going to be a month, 2 months, 6 months? How long is it going to be? And I think people need to know that as well. The other thing that I think I talked somewhere else in this video, because I'm not going to lie, I started recording this yesterday, I had to deal with family stuff, and then I came back to this today on Sunday. But another thing I was thinking about in the context of the store itself, see, a lot of stores and websites will have this thing where once you put an item into a basket on a website, it essentially has like, I guess, a code or an item number or whatever once you put it in there, and it will remain in that basket for a certain period of time. And given the state of how things are and have been over the past year or plus, this is something they need to consider if they do some website overhaul, really, which needs to come. They need to have it where if you put an item into the basket, it will remain in there for, I would say, it has to be like up to half an hour, which seems like a very long time. But when you have the amount of instability they have on the site right now, it kind of needs to be that long to be fair to people. The other thing that they need to do, okay, they already say limit one per customer. That doesn't seem to be deterring scalpers and using their bots and whatever. They need to have some kind of system where you also need to go through that process where you are doing like an automated check. You need to do one of those little robot capture things. It has to have some kind of process where you have to show that you are a human. There are many different ones, we've all seen them. You need to have that process in place. It has to happen because clearly the current system as it is not working. And I don't know whether I would advocate for this, but I have seen many people suggest it before that they should have people on staff or some kind of automated process at their HQ where they are going through and checking, okay, when we make a limited edition book release, when we're doing a limited box set run, who is buying from the same card? Okay, who's buying from the same card? Who's shipping to the same address? Is there somebody who is getting like 10 of these, 20 of these things shipped to their same address? If so, maybe that person is worth blacklisting, or at least sending an email and saying, hey, so what the hell is going on here? You know, that needs to be happening, I think, when you are dealing with the kind of situation you have where they're having limited numbers, not everybody clearly is able to secure these, the website's got these problems, and then also you're seeing this huge amount of scalpers day one. There needs to be more in place, more to demonstrate an effort of goodwill to help customers secure the product that they want. And I'm not talking about price because that's something that people never stop talking about it. They could put it down, they could put it up. People will never stop talking about it. Again, as I've said 100 times, it's about the subjective value of things. It's the subjective value of things. Now, that's obviously not the only factor which is going to dictate the value of something. There are many other factors as well. But it is one thing, and it essentially is just saying, well, you as an individual will subjectively look at something, subjectively meaning how you feel towards it, how important that thing is for you. You may look at that thing and think, yeah, for the price that it is, that feels about right for me. Another person might look at that based on their personal situation and think, whoa, that's way too expensive. It's a subjective value. Now, does that mean that everybody will be paying always the highest that somebody is willing to pay for something? Obviously not. There is a balance. It will come down to some kind of median level where the company will realize, hey, if we sell this for too much, then not enough people are buying it. But if we bring it down to this price, then enough people are buying it that it feels about where we want it to be. That's the thing when it comes to business. That's how you get to something like a market value. Essentially, what is the business wanting to pay for it? What are the customers wanting to pay for it? And finding somewhere in between. And that's why I never really subscribe to this thing that people go on and on about things being too expensive. The market and people's own subjective value interpretation of things is what dictates that. And anything else beyond that is really just personal opinion. It's not really applicable. Everybody's personal situations are different. And when people always talk about Warhammer in terms of how expensive is it to get into, again, really the question is, well, it depends what level you want to come into. With 10th edition, they're doing this whole new thing where you basically need to buy a combat patrol and bang, that's it, you can play the game. It depends on what level you are talking about wanting to play the game at. There are other systems like Titanicus and Necromunda, which don't require you to have a gigantic army. And I do think that is comparable to other things like, for example, PC gaming. You know, it's true, I guess, overall that you can always, of course, get a rig for PC gaming, which is a sort of medium level thing, and you can still play a lot of those games. But there are some games which really have a high demand, and if you want to get the maximum amount out of them, you're going to have to invest in there. I know it's not the best example, it's not directly comparable, but I'm just saying that there are always scales and levels to things in terms of what you can put in as an initial outlay and what you can get back out of it. That's really all I'm trying to say. Basically every week for the longest time now, Games Workshop has a pre-order release day of Saturday morning, or it's probably different if you're in the US and Europe, I don't know, sorry. But it could be for Sigmar, it could be for 40k. But there has been just an ongoing issue, especially when you have a big release like this weekend. The new Primarch model for Lionel Johnson, they're releasing Arcs of Omen the Lion, they're releasing the new book Son of the Forest for the Lion, and then also some other bits and pieces. And inevitably, a huge amount of people try to get on the website to purchase this stuff. And what happens is Games Workshop's site just crashes horribly. It was actually crashed for me between 40 minutes to an hour. By a miracle, I managed to actually get on at the right time and get that limited book. I don't know how I managed to do that, but I was successful. I've seen other people, for example, always manage to get the Siege of Terror limited books when they come out. I never even bothered because I was like, I don't want to deal with the stress of getting 5 books in and then not be able to get the other ones. But I saw on my Twitter this morning, loads of people coming being like, I've been online since like 8 a.m, 7 a.m, 9 a.m. I've been refreshing the website waiting for it to come up and I still missed out. An ongoing issue is that people will put the items, like they'll be there as the products come online on the website. They will put them into their shopping cart. They will go to checkout. It takes like a few moments maybe to load through because the website is under such immense pressure of traffic. And then they get to their checkout, bang, it's gone. It's happened to me several times with limited books and models and stuff like this. And it is just very, very frustrating, very stressful. Made only worse by the fact that very obviously, if you then immediately go to eBay, you will see 20 of these limited products listed for 3, 4, 5 times the list price of the product. For example, the limited book, The Lion, Son of the Forest, sold for £45. But if you go to eBay immediately after, you will see it there for £200, £280, £300 more. I remember when the Siege of Terror End and the Death came out the other day, that also was in the same situation, even just for the hardback. Forget about the limited edition. The hardback of the End and the Death was up on eBay for £300, £400 straight after release. Now the scalper situation is one problem. It's one problem. It is obviously driven by the fear of missing out. And then of course the other thing is people say, well, they should just make a lot more copies of the book and then everybody would be happy. Yes, I suppose you could do that. I mean, they often do these limited runs in like 1,000 or 2,000 prints. I question how much actually people care about it being literally limited in terms of, you know, it being this specific very small amount, like, oh, I managed to get a copy. I personally couldn't care less how many copies of those nice books there are. I just prefer to have the limited ones when I can get them because they look super nice, they're really, you know, beautifully produced and they look great for my collection. But whether you produce 1,000, 2,000, 10,000, 100,000, I genuinely couldn't care less. And they obviously should make their money back on those products, I would imagine. Obviously, the limited edition versions usually are signed by the author. But again, why couldn't you just have like, oh, the first 2,000 copies are signed by the author, but then the 10,000, you know, the rest of the number that are just produced don't get signed. I think you could do that. I don't think people would be too fussed about that. I think people would actually be fine. They'd be like, oh, nice, I got a signed one. But moreover, they care a lot about actually getting the copy of the book. I think people care more about that. I think the more frustrating part is for people who are obviously trying to get the miniatures. Now, I will note that obviously, usually when it's a miniature which is going to be around for some time, like the lion. I don't see the lion going away. Inevitably, they will come back in stock, so it's not a huge stress. At the same time, if the miniatures and the models are your thing, that's your part of 40k that you really enjoy, you want to be able to pick up that product without having an incredibly stressful Saturday morning sitting there, refresh, the website crashes, and then you're trying to search around on third-party sort of independent store sites trying to find it. It's out of stock, now I've got to go to another store, I get it into my cart, oh crap, it's out of stock, okay, I got to go to another. It often feels like when they do these releases, they just don't make enough product. And you think, okay, well, how are they determining the numbers? What if there was some way that people could, I guess, register ahead of time, say I register my interest or something along those lines? Obviously they can't announce things too far down the line, but if you were able to, for example, just put yourself on a register of I'm generally interested when new products come out, it would give them kind of a ballpark. I mean, I would imagine obviously they must have some data systems which enable them to try and predict how much stock to produce, and obviously they didn't want to go crazy and just produce so much that they will never be able to get rid of it. And I think also there's a lot of things that you can't really know. Like, I don't fully understand what issues obviously they have at their production sites. There's often, we've seen on the website, a lot of issues perhaps with production, because there's very often products which are just unavailable for a massive amount of time. Just in the past few years, I remember, for example, the Necromunda tiles, the Necromunda base tiles that you can use for that game system, they were out of stock for at least a year. I remember also, for example, I really wanted some Psi Titans for Titanicus. They were out of stock for, again, a massive amount of time, maybe a year, and then suddenly they came back and just have always been available since that time. The other thing I remember was the Eldari Webway gates. That was another one which was out of stock for some time. And probably there are many other products as well. They're just out of stock, supposed to come back, but no idea, no estimation as to when that will be. I do know, as I think people have talked about though, that Games Workshop have recently produced like a brand new huge warehouse facility, and that I think has also had some issues there. Product selling out very, very quickly, almost instantly, has been this big fear for people, and it's just become this huge stress that every time you have a pre-order weekend, what should be a really pleasant experience, you come on the website, you have a nice little browse, you choose the product you want, and you're like, oh, this is great, I get to have that new product, and I'm going to really enjoy doing that model. This is going to be a really fun week for me. Instead, it becomes this horrifyingly stressful thing where you're just like, oh my god, might I get it? I don't know. And then I've just seen so many people frustrated and pissed off. I feel bad also for the people working at Games Workshop in the product departments, because obviously these people spend a great deal of time preparing the models themselves, designing the models, all the team preparing all that stuff, but then what you end up with, because of either the production issues or the website issues, is a community that just are pretty pissed off. And obviously, that's just not great. It must be really frustrating. Finally this product comes out, let's have a look around on like socials and see what people are saying, and it's just people constantly annoyed, complaining, pissed off because they couldn't get it, or it's too expensive, or it's on eBay. It must be very disheartening. It does seem sometimes like products that you might imagine sell really well don't, and that's always been a bit of a confusing thing. Obviously something like a new Primarch is going to sell very well and just be sold out very quickly, of course. But I remember recently, like for example with the Agastus Marines set, people were saying things like, oh, I'm not even going to bother try get it because it's just going to get sold out instantly, and it didn't. There was enough availability for that. Also, some books don't seem to sell out immediately. Some of the Siege of Terror novellas that are hardback rather than the main core books, those don't seem to have sold quite as intensely. Things like when the new Dawn of Fire books come up, they don't seem to sell out immediately. Some of the Kill Team sets, like they recently did the Kill Team sets with the Arbites, that was just gone immediately. Like, people really enjoy the Arbites. So yeah, just a small point on Games Workshop side, I suppose. It does seem very, very variable. And like I say, I don't really know how their production system works in kind of how much they can produce at a certain time. I think the other thing that I could just throw in there would be that we forget sometimes that Games Workshop really has grown exponentially in the last sort of 5 years, since sort of 2018. Any business is not going to want to expand itself too quickly, especially in terms of their hardware and production materials. Of course, you have to expand to meet your customer demand, otherwise you end up in a situation like this where everybody's just pissed off all the time and it becomes counterproductive. So there's that. I think some of that limitation is certainly on the production side of things, but it also seems to be just in the approach, in the sense that it is a smaller or even a medium business strategy. You don't want to invest in a huge amount of product if you aren't sure that it's going to sell, because then of course you've essentially got a surplus, you've wasted that investment. It may sell in time, but it's money that's just sort of sitting there instead of being able to put it back into the business or profit from it. Now again, that is more of a sort of smaller, I'm not some business person by the way, but this is pretty straightforward stuff. It's a smaller, medium level business strategy to be doing that kind of thing. Once you are a bigger company and you have this capital sitting around, you have the profits there, you should be able to produce large quantities of your product to ensure that your customers are getting what they need to get, because the frustration and the disappointment and the unhappiness in your customer doesn't want to disproportionately start affecting the business. And I think right now, anybody can see that those two things don't seem to be aligning particularly well. And yet they do seem to keep on, and they have done for the last few years, with this strategy of, we're going to make a box set, we're going to make a special release, we're going to make a limited edition thing, we're going to make this amount because we know that that amount of that product will sell out. And like I say, that to me seems a small, medium business strategy where they're minimizing the risk, but at the expense of pissing off a lot of people in the community, which doesn't seem great as a long-term strategy. I think the other part which comes along with that is, again, your business size. When you're a smaller business, not having necessarily enough product, people can be more understanding about that because they realize, oh, okay, this isn't a big company and they don't necessarily have the capital sitting there to make an investment to hedge their bets on having enough product for people. People are more reasonable and understanding about that. When it is a huge company that's making millions and millions in profits, people are less understanding about that because they themselves can't really understand why is that an issue. Once you start annoying enough people that they're not able to get that product, then what you may start to see happen is exactly what we do see in people's comments, where people are saying, I've tried for a year to get some of these products, I've given up completely on the hobby at this point. Now, once you start obviously reaching a point where there are many people who share that sentiment of, I'm just going to quit because I'm getting pissed off, that's not great in the long term, because then of course, the investment that person may have made for potentially the whole of the rest of their life, you're going to lose a lot more there than you would have lost if you just made a few losses on that individual sort of run, that individual product run, that box set. Yeah, sure, maybe you'd have ended up with some boxes left over and that would be a loss. But if it comes at the expense of people who would have made investment over their lifetime, that's obviously not a good thing. Now, obviously they have people running the numbers. I'm sure they have numbers that they're able to look at here. It seems unusual, and I think that's why it's kind of jarring for people. Now, maybe that's going to change in the coming years because, again, as the company grows and they start to maybe see that that's something they need to adapt and shift their strategy, all very well and good. And you have to wonder how many customers are being lost in the short term right now while they're getting annoyed about these things year after year, not being able to get access to products, seeing the scalping situation get worse and worse continually. It just feels like this grinding attrition against customers that is just, making people very annoyed. And that's why it's a topic also that's worth talking about, because it's just something which doesn't seem to be going away. It just keeps getting worse and people are getting very angry about it. But at the same time, you can't just go crazy just spending out on things. And also production takes time. I mean, they've just finished this huge new warehouse, which is going to be their sort of shipping distribution center, which is much, much bigger than what they had before. That doesn't happen instantly. You obviously have to develop the site, get your permission to do it, build the bloody thing, get it all up and running, integrate it with your current system so it doesn't have this horrible disconnect. There's a lot of stuff which has to happen there. So I think, fair's fair. You got to kind of take some of these things into consideration. At the same time, obviously, we just see the customer side of things. We just see the front end. And that right now has not been great. You just end up with a lot of people that are unhappy, often a little disillusioned. I've seen some people saying like, I'm just giving up trying to buy any of these new things. I'm just going to make do with what I have and I'll pick up stuff as and when I can. It shouldn't be what the hobby is about. It should be an enjoyable thing. People should be able to feel excitement. They should be able to feel like, oh, this is great. I'm going to get that new thing that I've been really looking forward to, because that's what a hobby is about. It's about having some enjoyment outside of your work and family life and things that are, a bit stressful. You want to have those nice moments where you can kind of enjoy something, spend your hard-earned money, get the things that you like. And it's just a shame if even your hobby becomes an incredibly stressful frustration. And that's why, I don't blame people when they say, you know what, I'm done with it. I can't handle like every bloody week not being able to get the things. I think personally it would be a little bit strong to kind of just give up on like a really enjoyable hobby just because of this issue. But at the same time, yeah, fair enough. So what can Games Workshop do to improve this situation? I think obviously they need to try and somehow get a handle on more accurately predicting the amount of stock necessary. I think the other issue is, of course, the website. Now, understandably, when a huge amount of people come onto your website all in one go, the sheer volume of traffic, it's basically like a DDoS attack, right? The amount of traffic coming onto your website can bring it down if it's just too great. At the same time, the pre-order weekend is probably going to be one of the easiest time frame where your site is going to receive this massive amount of traffic, and they should be able to sort of bolster the servers, etc., to handle that extra traffic. And the fact that they seem not to continually is pretty frustrating, because it's 2023. Websites can handle a massive amount of traffic as and when. There is a lot of people who are wanting to purchase these products. There's a lot of people who enjoy 40k. It seems to be this recurring problem, and I'm just can't believe that it's been, a year or 2 years and they are still having this issue. They must be able to find a way to solve that. And I think people would be mildly less frustrated if the website didn't crash whilst they were trying to make a purchase. Because I think a lot of the people who most desperately want that product are sitting there at their computers refreshing, and they are ready to purchase. And there can't be much more of a frustrating consumer experience than literally clicking on a product, clicking checkout, and then as you get to the checkout screen, it's sold out. That's a pretty shockingly bad consumer experience. Some people are saying it's even more frustrating than trying to buy tickets for a huge concert or something like that. So a while back, Games Workshop did trial this system, which they seem to, and I have to say thankfully, have gotten rid of, was this kind of queuing system on their website. Like, they know it's a problem. They're trying to find a way around it. And what would happen is you're there, you're waiting to purchase the items when they come up for pre-order. But the weird thing was that you could be sitting there from 7 a.m, 8 a.m, 9 a.m, but as soon as you got to that 10 a.m. UK time window and the pre-orders were going up, it didn't matter if you had been there earlier than other people. Basically, as soon as that queuing system came in, bang, it just threw you into a queue. And what happened to me a couple of times was that I was there, I was ready to make my purchase, and I have to say I am pretty okay most of the time. I have missed out on things, but a lot of the time if I'm there and the website doesn't have a major problem, I can usually get what I need to get. But when they had this queuing system, it just throws you in the queue. So I would be there at the right time, ready to go. And of course, as soon as you actually are allowed onto the website, all the products are sold out. So what's the point? And I think that's why they got rid of it, because they realized it was just not a functional, fair working system. I think the issue when it comes to pre-sales of these limited books though, and something like boxed sets of miniatures for a new edition release or just a supplemental release, are a little different. I think, like I was saying earlier, the limited releases, in my opinion, what they should do is stop producing like 2,000 of them, start doing like 10,000 of those limited books. But then you make like only the first 1,000 copies signed and the rest are just available. I think that would generally solve a pretty reasonable amount of the fear of missing out with those limited book releases. I think there would still be some scalping, but it would probably be less prevalent. People wouldn't feel quite so much pressure about it. In my opinion, that would be worth a try. Just do some slightly larger print runs of those limited edition, because people clearly want them. I don't think you can do much else than that. You can't really stop the issue of scalping. When it comes to miniatures, like this weekend, we had obviously the Lion, we had also Azrael for the Dark Angels and so on. Those guys got sold out. Poor Vashtor though. Yeah, Azrael and the Lion sold out instantly. Vashtor. Poor Vashtor. Poor Vashtor. Vashtor's still available. But if we're talking about buying those individual models for pre-order, I don't think it's quite the same as the box sets issue. Because yes, it is frustrating. You obviously want to get that new miniature. You want to paint it. You want to enjoy it. Those miniatures are going to come back. It's not like the books where if you don't get it that day, bang, that's it. You will never get it again. Even just the standard hardback, they might get a bit more stock or something, but maybe not. Like I said, with Games Workshop and books, it's one and done. You don't get it, it's gone forever. But that's why I'm always talking about getting these supplements, because again, like supplements like for Necromunda and Arcs of Omen, you never know, especially somebody who's interested in the lore, you never know when they're going to become more relevant in the future, and they often are just very, very interesting things to have, so I always try to get on those. But the box sets, let's talk about the box sets, the supplements, and more importantly, edition box sets. Things like Indomitus. Remember when they did Indomitus? Remember the absolute shambles that Indomitus was in the first sort of 24 hours? I think I even did videos about that. But specifically, I think when 10th edition comes along, they're obviously going to do some kind of 10th edition box set. Because 10th edition is obviously such a big reset compared to things in the past. When they did Indomitus, it obviously wasn't really like a new game system completely, which is why the Indomitus set was mainly just the kind of models, and they even said that at the time. They were like, this is just really, Indomitus is, the box set was for people that were playing at the time to kind of give them the new models all in that one box set at a bit of a discount from what you would be paying for them individually, right? But it certainly didn't stop people wanting that box set. Indomitus was just sold out immediately, and then straight away you went into the scalping issue. They were just straight on eBay immediately, and that actually provoked some response from Games Workshop that time, because what they did was, remember, you could go and you could order your Indomitus set from the Games Workshop site. They just specifically said, even though we don't have the stock right now, we will definitely guarantee that you get one. The important thing was that they saw that people were losing their mind over the fact that they missed out on getting the Indomitus set when it went live, and then people were scalping it on eBay, and it really made people very angry. And so they fixed that problem. They came in and they said, look, we will make it so that you can definitely get one. And I think with 10th edition, they need to... I'm actually surprised that they haven't done that more often with box sets in general, but I think the sort of more supplementary box sets and stuff like Kill Team, they just don't really care too much about. It's just another product that's like, get it if you can, otherwise whatever. That just seems to be the way it feels. But with something like 10th, I think they probably understand that it has slightly more weight, slightly more sort of gravitas to it. And I think they probably don't want it to be like an embarrassing shambles, because it is slightly embarrassing. It's slightly embarrassing when your core customers can't pick up your product. But people that are clearly just straight profiteering off of, limited availability seem absolutely more than capable of doing it. It's not a good look, and yeah, it rightfully makes people very annoyed. So I think very straightforward, what they just need to do is when they release the 10th, get ahead and make an announcement the week before. Let people know so that they don't panic and they don't go to stuff like eBay and start trying to purchase these overpriced box sets. They will probably produce as much as they think they need to or can, and I need everybody to just take your cynical hat off for a minute, and I will do the same. I think when 10th comes along, they will genuinely try and produce as much as they can, enough to meet demand. Whether or not they do, that's a totally different thing. But I can't imagine they genuinely want to create a situation which is, like I say, embarrassing and creates a lot of frustration right at the start of a new edition. Because remember, the whole point of 10th edition is that they're trying to get people back to playing 40k. They're trying to bring people in who have been a bit disillusioned in 9th. They want to get people back on board. You don't get people back on board by making them super pissed off on day one. I think people generally are pretty understanding to, people's patience is quite good. So long as you just let them know, look, you will get your copy. It just might be in a couple of months' time. We're sorry. I do think people are understanding about that. I would be. I would be frustrated for sure if I was unable to get a copy, but I would feel heartened that I knew I was going to be able to, and I would make do. That's the other thing. When 10th comes out, you will be able to start playing from those free rule downloads, the indexes, so you can use your existing army already. I would probably be quite happy to do that and just be like, oh yeah, I look forward to getting that set as and when it arrives. And I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm not. I'm just saying, I think generally speaking, from the people that I have spoken to and myself, I think people would just rather be comfortable in the knowledge that they know they're going to be able to get the thing than the frustration of thinking, well, I can't possibly get this other than paying this outrageous amount from somebody on eBay. I really do think that is the case. Now, whenever I do these kind of chit-chats and discussions, I always come to the community tab on the YouTube channel. If you don't know where it is, it's on my YouTube channel and it's titled Community, and you can see it, because I just want to gauge some of your opinions, some of your interests. So we'll just have a look at a couple of those and then I'll do some final thoughts. So as usual, you guys left me a load of great thoughts and comments about this. There was actually a huge amount, so I've just picked out a few, no particular order, and I'll try and give a few small thoughts about these as we go along. Havnock says, I'm relatively new to Warhammer 40k, and one thing that I found very infuriating is that many books are simply not available physically. I understand why that is the case, but as a newcomer who definitely prefers physical books over ebooks, it's sort of unwelcoming. Naturally, you can find them secondhand though, usually for an eye-gouging price. This is actually something that I have commented on before, and I kind of wanted to throw into a video. I think a lot of people coming new into Warhammer don't realise that the huge back catalogue of material is just not available physically. I will note, there is a lot of books that you can get, but if you really want to look back through stuff, it can be difficult, and when it comes to the supplements, forget about it. Aaron says, the place I normally purchase 40k stuff is a major retailer and has very strict one book per customer rules, but the final Ox Roman book was gone in 30 seconds. I also saw the Lion and Retinue model came on sale in Japan and their site immediately went down, and once it was live again, it was no longer available. I'm in Australia, so I've got no idea when we actually get the model, so I'm refreshing every 10 minutes to not miss out. Yeah, I will just say, things are frustrating often in the UK, but I of course have no idea really what it's like for people just out in the rest of the world, whether it's Australia, in Europe, or US, or anywhere. We know that the prices are a lot more, but I would imagine that the amount of stock which gets out to those locations is probably less as well. I don't know. Tell me your experiences in the comments, please. Kevin says, I don't think GW cares as long as they sell, but I can't help but think they're doing themselves a disservice with this kind of thing. I'm super casual with my 1500 points of Death Guard and nothing else, but have been interested in those dwarves, I think he means the Votan, and probably would have bought a box. Stuff like this is just driving me further away from the brand entirely and into the sweet arms of GW's worst nightmares, 3D printing. It's just like streaming. Yeah, of course a lot of people are talking about 3D printing more and more and more, so it's true. But, you know, some years back I did say like, it's not going to really take off. It seems to be going in that direction. People really are enjoying 3D printing more and more and more. I will say often people do give 3D printing a bit of a, a rose tinted view. You need the space for it. You need the time to set it all up. It can be a bit of a pain in the ass, let's be real. Okay, so it's not the be all and end all. Somebody like myself, I physically just right now don't have the time. Other people do. It's something I may look into, but anyway, it's just like streaming, straight back to the piracy once media providers all decided they needed their own platforms to jack up prices. Even worse though, because with printing, I'll no longer be tied to a specific game, making me a miniature game player, not a Warhammer player. I can't be alone in this, right? And the streaming services thing is pretty funny. They didn't realize that piracy mainly occurred in sort of media because it was mainly down to people's laziness and irritation that things were not released at a sort of timely manner more than anything else. It wasn't that people didn't want to pay for media like watching shows and movies and things like that. It's just that it made things generally easier for people because they didn't have a straightforward centralized way to get hold of the things they like. And then these same companies come along, break up everything into individual components, try and charge the same price for it all, and then wonder why people are not willing to do that. It's pretty bloody obvious. Tenair says it's just a very odd business model to lose all that potential revenue to scalpers when they must know demand will be high and must know that by vastly increasing supply or even by making them made to order would solve the problem. Causing frustration to their longtime fans and customers who move away to other brands seems to be quite a risky move for their future. Seeing pre-order items already on auction sites for vastly inflated amounts, even while their own website has crashed within minutes, is textbook GW these days, it seems. I can understand them being swamped with orders, but someone in charge must think to themselves, this is going to sell like crazy after our month-long social media hype train. Let's make a lot to make sure. GW is a huge company with a lot of resources and infrastructure these days, so it's odd that they can't maintain large stock levels which they know will sell. From a purely business standpoint, I certainly would be thinking twice about investing in a company if I was a shareholder and knew that potential profits on large rollouts of new product were being lost due to scalping. Who knows how 10th will be rolled out, but if it's going to be a hyped up big box set, then I'm not holding my breath. I think there's a lot to be said that's correct in that statement. Tosh says, constructive comment, there is no point trying to run a seasonal narrative to get people interested with associated model ranges like the boarding action stuff if the books containing the narrative and rules aren't available. Same with the Kill Team boxes. This is a really good point. Again, if you're a player of the game, you're trying to do narratives, and also they're introducing supplementary material and seasonal things, but then you want to get those Kill Team box sets, you want to get those supplementary sets so that you can do those seasonal gameplays, mix it up as you go along. But they're just constantly unavailable. Again, it kind of kills the game for you, doesn't it? Random Dan, my personal opinion is that they should just do away with pre-orders. Set a date for release and release the items both online and in stores equally. This would give people a fighting chance to get what they want, as you have both the option of online or to pop in your local store instead of the entire stock selling out online a week before release. My friendly local gaming store doesn't put his full allocation of pre-order stock on his website and keeps a couple of each pre-order to put on the shelves in his store for the locals to be able to get them if they missed out online, which is really good, especially for the Xmas battle forces, which are usually snapped up by scalpers and sold for more than what you can buy the entire contents for individually. I think, again, that's a really good sort of testimony for local gaming stores who know their customers. They know the people that are going in there regularly, and they get allocated a certain amount of product from Games Workshop, but there's nothing that says they have to sell it all online. They could put 4, 5, 10 boxes aside in store for the people they know who they've got coming in. So again, good points there. Grey Fox says, something that baffles me is that they still haven't shifted from pre-orders to a made-to-order on top of pre-orders. That way they get the pre-order and more money because people will still want it after the pre-orders are sold out. They could have pre-orders be immediate and made-to-orders we ran out, need to make more a little bit late kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, I've said this. I think that's definitely what they should do. It makes sense, but it's whether they've got, I guess, the capacity, time and infrastructure to do it. And then on the other end of things, Max Outrider says, I'm trying to get into the hobby after being introduced by friends, so totally opposite end of the scale here. Says I was gifted a small box of the Sisters of Battle, so was planning on expanding from there. When seeing the announcement for the boarding patrol box for the Sisters, I thought that'd be a good way to get into things. Turns out when people say that they go fast, I wasn't anticipating for stock to be gone in under 2 hours. I have also tried to get my hands on a Kill Team starter set, as I have the Kill Team Novitiates and want to expand so I can play the actual game with my friends. Can't get it anywhere without extortionate increases above the retail price. Been sitting on a back order list for almost 2 months. All these issues is a massive off-put for somebody to get into this hobby on top of the prices. Now, of course, I had, like I said, a ton more comments from you guys, so I can't put them all in this video, otherwise it'd be incredibly long, longer than it already is. If you want to check out the comments and thoughts from people, just go to my community tab, see that post, you can have a read through yourself. But I think all around, I think those comments give a really good picture of the sort of general sentiments, because this is the kind of thing that I just see all the time. It's the kind of stuff that I've been seeing for 6 months, a year, longer. You just see this stuff. And then on top of that, like I say, there's a lot of comedy in the fact that very often when you go to the website, you try to make a purchase, you get to the checkout, you try to buy the product, bang, it's out of stock. And that's bad enough. But then I'm always amused by these sort of automated emails which go out to you where it's like telling you, hey, did you know that this product is up for sale today? It's like, yeah, I do know because I literally just missed out on buying that product. Or even worse, I had some things in my cart which obviously like the website crashed for like an hour, and then of course I managed to get my Oxfam and the Lion from like an independent store instead of from the Games Workshop store this morning. But because things are so chaotic, usually on these mornings I've got like a couple of things open, a couple of tabs open, different stores, and I'm trying to like get one of them as it comes live basically. And so I did have something in my cart from Games Workshop. So hilariously, when the website eventually came back up an hour later, I had the email come through which was like, thanks for stopping by, we noticed you had something in your cart, do you still want to check that out, do you still want to buy it? And it's like, well, I did, but your website crashed and now it's totally out of stock. It's just like rubbing salt into the wound, and it feels like they're trolling you at this point. It really feels like just some ridiculous meme, and yeah, it's funny, but it's not funny at all. So my final thought for today is communication, really. I think the biggest issue with a lot of these things is communication, and it seems to be something that Games Workshop just flat out don't do, and I don't really understand why that would be, because the community generally seem pretty understanding. I actually think most people, when it comes to a hobby or something they really enjoy, they want to keep enjoying that thing. Also, I think, just speaking from people I know in the hobby space, people in the 40k and probably Sigmar hobby space seem largely quite good, understanding kind of people. So I think if they just came out and said, hey guys, look, we're really sorry, we're trying our best to do this, blah blah blah, we've had this issue, and etc etc, I think most people would say, okay, fair enough, irritating, but fair enough. I think also, like I say, when it comes to releasing specific new edition box sets and things like that, if they can get ahead of the problem and make a community announcement, a post, and they can just say something pretty honest and straightforward, like, look, in the past we're aware that we've had issues meeting demand when a big release comes out. This time we are trying our best to not have that happen. This is our plan. We're trying to produce enough stock for that day. If we don't meet enough stock for demand, you will definitely be able to get your edition, you'll be able to get your copy. It's a very straightforward, simple, honest statement to make, and I think if they did that, there would be a large amount of goodwill towards them for it. Much more so than just kind of leaving it to roll the dice, if you will. In terms of the limited edition books and so forth, I do understand that it's annoying. It's annoying for me personally. I don't think it's quite as big a deal as some of these box set issues. I do wish that they would just produce more, and I do wish that there was something they could do to sort of stop the kind of insidious scalping thing which has just been going on and seemingly getting worse and worse, but it is what it is. When it comes to, though, the hardback editions of books and the supplementary material, that's a different thing. I quite honestly just wish they produced more stock and that it was available for longer, because very often, like I say, the kind of first week is really your window of opportunity, and after that you're kind of done. Sometimes you will see hardback books and supplementary material, like I say, for Necromunda Titanicus, they stick around and they're available, but again, it seems quite random. Don't really understand how sometimes they are available and not, and there's no real sort of rhyme or reason to it, which is pretty annoying. Still, Games Workshop's becoming this ever bigger company. I think the next 5 years is going to be a really huge thing for them, and I think that they are going to have to adapt. I think they are going to have to deal with some of these issues one way or the other, because if they don't, as the company grows and gets bigger, it means it gets more public attention, more public awareness, and these issues are going to become more and more embarrassing if they don't somehow get a handle on them. And I think really that's my thought for the day. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed. Lore coming up as soon as I can get it finished, and I'll see you next time.